In the heart of Europe, in Italy, a land that had been the center of Catholicism for centuries and home to the Vatican, an extraordinary spiritual movement quietly began. Thousands of nuns, women who had dedicated their lives to prayer, devotion, and service within monastery walls, started experiencing an awakening that would ultimately transform their faith and their lives. For decades, these women lived in silence. Their days were filled with prayers, readings of the Bible, rituals, and acts of charity. Yet, despite their devotion, many felt a profound emptiness. Their hearts were restless, whispering questions that seemed to have no answer. Why must God be represented in human form? Why is original sin passed down to every child? Why, after years of devotion and constant prayer, did their hearts still feel a void? A few of them, in secret, began to explore. They read about other religions in hidden corners of their convents. They listened to Qur'anic recitations on concealed devices, studied translations, and pondered the meanings of each verse. Among the passages that deeply moved them was Surah Al-Ikhlas. Say, He is Allah, the One. Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born, and there is none comparable to him. The words were simple but profoundly powerful. Islam's clarity, its direct connection to God without intermediaries, incarnations, or hierarchical structures, spoke to a truth they had been seeking for decades. The phrase, La ilaha illallah, struck their hearts like a spark of lightning, awakening a spiritual clarity that had been missing in their lives. From one nun to another, the whispers of curiosity spread. 10 nuns became dozens. Dozens became hundreds. They began to pray in the Islamic way, in private, recite verses, and quietly study translations. This private exploration slowly became a shared journey, as each woman discovered not only a new understanding of God, but also a newfound peace she had never known within the convent walls. The awakening was subtle at first, but powerful. In their solitude, the journey of discovery deepened when a Muslim professor from the University of Rome visited the convent to give a lecture on comparative religion. His presence was calm yet commanding, his words deliberate and gentle, carefully guiding the audience through concepts many had never truly explored. He spoke of Tawheed, the pure oneness of God, emphasizing the simplicity and clarity of a faith that rejected intermediaries, idols, or the belief that God could take human form. For women who had silently wrestled with these questions, his words struck deeply. They had prayed for answers for years, yet here was a truth that felt natural, unforced, and consistent. He reminded them that all prophets came with the same message: worship God alone. But it was his discussion of Mary, peace be upon her, that moved the nuns most. He explained that in Islam, Mary is honored more than in any other scripture. She has an entire chapter, Surah Maryam, dedicated to her, describing her purity and closeness to God. For decades, these women had revered her, yet realizing that Islam preserved her story with such dignity touched their hearts beyond words. That night, many could not sleep. They replayed the lecture in their minds, their hearts overwhelmed by awe and relief. Tears flowed, not of sadness but of joy. The emptiness that shadowed their devotion began to fade. They realized that seeking truth was not betrayal but devotion itself, a path God allowed them to walk. In the following days, their routines changed quietly. Some nuns began reading Qur'an translations in hidden corners. Others listened to recitations on small devices, trembling at every verse. They whispered about Islamic prayers, imitated movements they had seen in books, and shared discoveries with one another in secrecy. What began as curiosity soon became collective. Whispers turned to discussions, and discussions into study circles. Dozens joined, then hundreds. They copied verses, exchanged notes, and guided one another through new ideas. Together they began to feel a unity that their years of silent ritual had never brought. Slowly the change became visible in their hearts. Anxiety lifted. Confusion turned to clarity. The anticipation for the moment of transformation grew. The nuns, now hundreds in number, had spent weeks in silent study, private prayers, and small group discussions. The once still corridors of the convent were now filled with subtle energy, a quiet yet powerful hum of curiosity, hope, and devotion. Each woman carried a private longing, a desire for a faith that spoke directly to the heart. As the days passed, the nuns' understanding deepened. They began to recognize the simplicity and logic of Islam's message. There was no divine hierarchy, no human incarnation, no intermediaries between God and the believer. The Qur'an's verses resonated with clarity and reason, answering questions that had lingered for decades. Each reading, each reflection, brought peace that grew stronger with every passing day. Then, the long-awaited day arrived. Outside Rome, in a grand hall, thousands of nuns gathered. They wore their traditional white habits, but something had changed in their expressions. Their faces radiated a new light, a mixture of hope, relief, and anticipation. The atmosphere was electric yet serene. Families, convent sisters, and close friends watched in quiet awe, aware that something monumental was about to occur. An imam stood before them, his voice calm but powerful as he began guiding them through the declaration of faith. One by one, the nuns recited the words after him. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah. Tears flowed freely, expressions shifting from anxiety to relief, from fear to peace. Some removed the crosses they had worn for decades, replacing them with simple hijabs provided by the organizers. Others kissed the Qur'an for the first time, their lips trembling, their eyes closed, absorbing the sacred text with profound reverence. Many fell into extended prostration, feeling the spiritual tranquility that had long eluded them. The hall echoed with cries of joy, sobs mingling with whispered prayers. The transformation was not merely ritualistic, it was deeply internal, a reshaping of the heart and soul. Each nun felt a weight lifted from her spirit, a clarity replacing decades of uncertainty. What had started as curiosity had culminated in full conviction, in the faith that fulfilled the spiritual yearnings they had carried for so long. News of the event spread rapidly. Italy was stunned. Europe watched in disbelief. How could the heart of Catholicism, the Vatican itself, witness thousands of nuns embracing a faith that many outside viewed as foreign? Church leaders were silent, media outlets scrambled to cover the story, and Muslims worldwide rejoiced in astonishment and gratitude. Yet for the nuns, this was never about public attention. It was about a personal, profound connection with God, an awakening that no societal pressure or tradition could suppress. In interviews, many former nuns spoke with trembling voices. For decades I sought God through prayer and ritual. Today, I feel His presence like never before. Islam is not a set of rules. It is life, it is clarity, it is peace. By the end of that historic day, the nuns had stepped into a new life. They were no longer merely caretakers of monasteries. They were Muslim sisters, ready to study the Qur'an, learn Arabic, wear the hijab, and share their spiritual journeys with others. The quiet halls of the convent had given birth to a movement of hearts awakened, of souls finding the peace they had long been seeking. In the days that followed, the lives of these women transformed profoundly. From quiet study and private devotion, they moved into active practice, learning how to live by the principles of Islam. Quranic verses became companions to their daily routines, guiding thoughts, actions, and decisions. The simplicity and clarity of monotheism provided the answers they had sought for decades, bringing peace where restlessness had once prevailed. They began to embrace the practical aspects of their new faith, learning to pray, understanding the meanings behind each verse, and reflecting on the lives of the prophets brought structure and purpose to their days. The once isolated convent walls, filled with years of routine and silence, now echoed with a new rhythm, the quiet, steady cadence of discovery, devotion, and inner joy. As news of their conversions spread, reactions varied. Italian media reported with astonishment. Church authorities struggled to comprehend the scale of this spiritual movement. Internationally, Muslims were moved, celebrating the remarkable awakening in the heart of Catholicism. Yet the women cared little for external recognition. For them, the transformation was intimate, deeply personal, and profoundly spiritual. Many former nuns described the internal changes they experienced. I no longer feel the emptiness that haunted me for decades. My prayers, once routine, now carry meaning. I feel closer to God than I ever have before. Others reflected on the newfound freedom Islam offered. I used to live within the constraints of habit and expectation. Now I experience a faith that is both deeply spiritual and liberating. Women who had once spent their lives in silent devotion began to explore new avenues of learning. They studied Arabic, memorized verses of the Qur'an, and sought knowledge about the history and philosophy of Islam. Their intellectual curiosity, once focused solely on Christian theology, expanded to embrace the rich tradition of Islamic scholarship. They discovered connections between history, morality, and spirituality that resonated with their hearts and minds alike. The transformation extended beyond the spiritual. Relationships within the convent. The final stage of this transformation was both personal and communal. On quiet mornings, the former nuns reflected on the journey they had taken, from curiosity to study, from hidden devotion to open faith. Each woman carried the serenity of understanding in her heart, a peace that had eluded them for decades. They now recited Qur'an verses with love and comprehension, prayed sincerely, and embraced the teachings of Islam in every aspect of their lives. The simple declaration, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, was no longer just words. It was a living testimony, the culmination of years of seeking and learning. Their stories inspired countless others. From the silence of the convent, their voices reached beyond borders, encouraging those who were searching for truth. Many of the former nuns began sharing their journeys through teaching, lectures, and digital platforms, showing that faith is accessible to every heart willing to seek. What began in secrecy became a movement of enlightenment, a demonstration that true guidance transcends tradition, walls, and centuries of history. From restless hearts, unwavering faith was born. From silence, a voice emerged that now echoes across Europe. In Italy, at the heart of Catholicism, thousands of women now proclaim, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. These words unite, bring peace, and shine as a beacon for anyone searching for meaning. The light of truth, once discovered, cannot be hidden. And from these awakened hearts, a new chapter of spiritual life in Europe has begun.